We'll have to cut that off.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome. I'm Bear Lawrence, and today I've got my good friend Kevin, otherwise known as Kevin H. Hilton,
Hi,
a
folks.
published author. Yeah, and we're going to be talking about his book Admissions, which I also had a hand in. And because my memory's not very good, I'll just ask Kev, how did this all come about?
Right. Well, when Bear and I worked in a research centre, he came to know that I enjoyed writing and at the time had written this book, although it wasn't on Amazon at the time because Amazon weren't doing Kindle and paperbacks at that point. And a number of people had enjoyed Breakfast in Bed. And Bear suggested it would be a possible idea to do a book of short stories. But I said to him at the time that short stories I didn't think would sell very well, but let me think about it. So the idea over the next few days came to me that we could have a group of people who tell stories as part of a bigger story. Because the main point about Admissions is it's based on a lot of true stories. I'm not saying every story that's in there is true, and a lot of facts have been artistically changed to protect people. But yes, the idea of that book was it was based on a lot of true experiences of either ourselves or others that we knew.
Yeah, I think it's possibly worth adding here that I came to work at where Kevin was working,
Yeah,
and we both had to travel quite a distance to get to work. And
yeah,
because of the traffic, we would get in very early in the morning,
yes,
and we'd be there probably a couple of hours before everybody else arrived in the office who lived locally.
yeah,
And I think we're just probably both natural storytellers,
yeah,
and would entertain ourselves with ever increasing stories of disbelief, but they're
yeah,
actually true.
yeah.
And this kind of fed into Admissions.
That's right.
Yeah.
And at the time, because as I say, Amazon really wasn't an option, we worked together to put a manuscript together, and it took quite some months. Really, there was a lot of thought went into it, and trying to work out which of the characters these stories would relate to. And eventually, we had a manuscript that we were searching for an agent to represent us in order to get to a publisher. But sadly, for all the effort that went in, as with anyone trying to take that route, these manuscripts end up at the bottom of a very big pile at each of the agents. And it went on the back burner for quite a while. In that time, I then started working on other books, including a sequel. And as I was doing that, I realized that all these things could interlink. And that's basically, a lot of my books, the series of books that I've written, they do interlink. And without having done Admissions, a lot of those characters in those future storylines and from Breakfast in Bed, wouldn't have arrived.
Yeah. I think it's worth expanding on the point where we about us doing a lot of research and effort into the book.
Yes.
So it's essentially a group of four people.
Yeah.
Who meet once a month in a pub.
Yeah.
In Newcastle.
Yeah.
And take it in turns to tell stories.
Yeah.
So it took us quite a few months to visit a number of locations.
Yes.
And involve drinking and telling stories.
That's right.
And sometimes material would come out of that for the book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was almost like doing a dry run of what the characters were up to. And of the four characters, two would tell their stories each month, and then the next month, it would be the next two characters. But there were rules for the storytelling. They had to be funny, funny enough for all of them to say, yes, we agree, this is good. But if somebody did something that upset the group, they were basically out. So, you weren't guaranteed to stay in the group if you weren't performing, as it were.
That's right. That's right. Um, so we worked on the book together, the idea for it,
Yeah.
but Kevin very much wrote the book. I take no claim for that. And I, at the time, could still read okay and
Yes.
did the original edit.
Yes, that's right.
But the book was revised in the last year or two.
Yes, I did revise the book more recently because Bear and I decided let's get it into the set on Amazon. So in a way, although it was one of the early books, it's come in later on. So you have to almost backtrack to understand how it fits into the rest of the books. Um, but yes, for a while we were unsure about publishing it. And then when I re-edited it, there was at least two stories I pulled out, one of which I changed because the whole process of writing is a bit of a maturing process for the writer as well as the characters. Characters need to transform through the experiences you put them through, and that also can affect the style that you write in. So whereas a number of my earlier books might seem a bit immature in some respects with the humour, they've ended up much more almost philosophical. So there is a change in the writing style, and although I wanted to respect the writing style of these earlier books, I felt there were some bits that just didn't sit well with me, so they did get changed.
So I think Kevin's already alluded to the fact that he's written other books.
Yeah.
Just how many have you written, Kevin, and how many different themes have you gone along?
Right. Okay. So there are 22 books on Amazon at the moment. Two of them are poetry. Two of them are short story. One of them is non-fiction about a travel around Queensland some years ago. There's a series of six photo illustrated humour books, short books called Cynic's View. Um, a lot of people have found them very entertaining, but all the others are interlinked stories to do with the main characters from, well, a couple of the main characters from Admissions.
My apologies. Time
That's
for
all right.
another tablet. Well,
Right.
I'll do it a bit later.
Okay. So the way to look at the books that I write, the fiction books, is that some of the books are contemporary in their style of writing and others are futuristic. For a while, I was using the phrase science fiction, but in honesty, although something is quite far into the future, it's more philosophical. It's about the ideas, the things that society or technology may create as events, and yeah, it's there's there's a bit of thinking involved. It's not just all humour and it's not just all action. Um, but yes, they interlink.
Thank you. Great, Kev. I do have some questions for you
Yeah.
that you may have helped provide for me. So, when did you start writing?
So I started writing actually when I was at school many years ago, when I would be given essays to write, and I'd start saying to the teacher, "Can I write about the same characters I've been writing about?" They're not the characters I write about these days, but unbeknownst to me, I was sort of writing chapters for a book, I suppose. I was structuring things in a way that each essay theme would be the theme of each storyline in a chapter. So that was sort of the start of it, but my spelling and grammar was very poor, and I think it was only my drive to get these ideas down onto paper that kept me going, because the marks for my essays would have discouraged most people.
Right, I've got another one here. There's almost a gap in this question,
Right.
because we've asked you when you started writing,
Yeah.
and then you've said, what made you determined to keep writing?
Okay.
So we've missed a step there, haven't we?
Well, possibly through education, through secondary education, I enjoyed writing. Getting these ideas out onto paper. But it was only when I got to sixth form and I was told, look, you're going to have to do O level English, because I'd only done CSE prior to that.
Just for our international viewers,
Yes.
this is high school.
Yes.
And slightly different levels of academic difficulty or achievement.
Right, yes.
So CSE at the time would have been
quite low level.
Yeah, and then
O levels,
ordinary
and
grade.
then A levels, and whatever came after that were higher.
Yeah, for our younger UK viewers, O levels are now called GCSEs.
Right.
And as I've recently discovered, D stars in a particular discipline is an A star in another one.
Oh, God.
And it's all got very confusing to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was in one particular English lesson, we were told you need to write the perfect murder. So the 6 or 7 of us who were in that class went off with our homework, and I think most of them applied their usual approach to, just get it done, write whatever comes to mind. But I did all of this planning and thinking, how would I kill somebody for real and get away with it? So having put all the creative energy into this plot, I wrote the essay, handed it in, and when the teacher came a couple of weeks later with the marks, he said, I'm absolutely appalled with everyone. Nobody seems to understand what perfect murder is, except Kelly. And I went, oh, well, that's good. He said, in fact, I'm giving him like AA+ for his effort. And I was thinking, oh, this is really good. But then things went a bit south, because he said, it's so good, in fact, I'm going to read it out to everyone to understand what perfect murder is. And I went, no, because it involved a description of me killing another student in the school. So it was all very embarrassing after that. So having had, this sort of motivational sort of high mark, to then be told that it's going to get read out, and the students were quite shocked with the depth I'd gone to ensure that it was a perfect murder and this person was killed.
I think shocking is a feature of your writing.
Yes, there's a lot of twists and shocks. I try to not do things that you're expecting. I don't want to do anything formulaic. So as you read the books, although characters pass through or follow on through the books, they're not the same as each other book. There's a slightly different approach to each one, as well as the main core theme of each one. So yes, it's I hope humorous.
Yeah. Where do your characters come from?
Right. Some of the characters are, I would say, exaggerations of people I know. In fact, I'd probably admit that Ben, Big Ben in the book, is an exaggeration of myself. There's some things he's much better at than I am, and other things that
the way to my house.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And other things he's much worse than me. So it's for comic content. those exaggerations, I think, are important. But other ones, they are just sort of stereotypes, characters, psychopaths, or just basic idiots, people that make dreadful mistakes, not thinking enough really, or caring in some cases. So, they're not necessarily based on anybody, but they are quite important to the storyline. Yeah.
So, if you're interested in any of Kevin's work, Amazon being the weird thing that it is, the books can be quite difficult to find.
They can.
So the simplest thing is to go to the Amazon app or the Amazon website and just search for Kevin H. Hilton.
Yeah.
If you try putting admissions or anything else, you'll end up in a world of pain. But Kevin H. Hilton will get you to some of his titles.
Yes.
And by investigating a bit further,
Yeah.
you'll get to what you might want to see.
Sometimes if you touch on one of my titles, you'll see at a lower bar below that it will list other ones that weren't in the first list you got to. Why on earth Amazon works that way, I don't know. But there you
go. I'm trying to learn to read again by reading a book that I've read before, and hopefully I can read Admissions again. I've managed the first chapter.
Oh, right, good.
And that's as far as I've been able to get.
And for those that enjoy it, the sequel that follows straight on afterwards is Misadventure. And that's a bit of a murder mystery.
Okay. I just want to show you Rosie has been in attendance all the time, sleeping. So thank you, Kev.
Well, thank you, Ben.
And I'll be back in the future, and maybe we'll have Kev on here again.
Right.
Thank you.
Cheers.